welcome to another episode of the Cozy Cottage Crochet Podcast. My name is Hannah, and this is a podcast all about crochet, a little bit of knitting, sometimes sewing, and generally living the yarniest life possible in St. Petersburg, Florida, where I live. How are you? It has been 2 weeks. This episode is going up a little bit late. It is Saturday morning, June 15th? I think. It's about 8:30 in the morning. Normally, this episode would have been live already. But I was traveling all week for a trip to Alabama with my church for a missions trip, and I will talk about that at the end of the episode, but we got back super late last night after a very long car ride, and I just am recording this morning. So it will go up today, just in a few hours. It'll be a few hours late. So thank you so much for your patience and for all of your well wishes, and if you are the praying type, the prayers that I know you sent my way while we were gone. It was a wonderful trip. If you are looking for me anywhere on the interwebs, you can find me as the Cozy Cottage Crochet on Instagram, on Facebook, the Cozy Cottage on Ravelry, and links to all of this will be directly down below. And of course, if you have any inquiries related to the podcast specifically, please do email me at thecozycottagecrochet@gmail.com. I do want to say I have been out of town for a week, and the Wi-Fi situation was a little sketchy, and I've been extremely busy. So if you emailed me or contacted me in the last week, I probably have read it, but I have not been able to respond yet. So I will be doing that this upcoming week. I am super dehydrated because we were out in the sun all week in Alabama, and then we were in the car all the way home yesterday. There's probably going to be some background noise at some point because it's 8:30 a.m. and my brother and his girlfriend and their baby live here. So at some point that baby's going to want some food. My husband left to go get me some Starbucks because he's an angel from heaven. So when he gives me the nectar of the gods, he's going to be back probably in like 20 minutes. I'm going to pause this and then my life will improve by 1,000%. And if you must know, my Starbucks order is a grande blonde almond milk latte with no foam. I used to never drink coffee ever, and I still really don't drink coffee because I don't like the taste, but I would drink the frappuccinos, which have like this much coffee in them and this much sugar. So one day I wanted a warm drink, so instead I got a white chocolate mocha, and I drank that for a while, and then I switched from, because that's like 1 billion calories, I switched from that to the soy milk latte. Now the soy milk at Starbucks still has sugar in it unless you get the skinny kind, however they say it. And then when I was on a particular diet at the beginning of the year or the end of last year, I switched to almond milk, which has no sweetener whatsoever. So it's just espresso and almond milk, and it's delicious and I love it. But that's really the only coffee that I will drink. Now that you know all about my coffee habits, shall we talk about yarny things? First of all, we have 2 make-alongs going on together in this group. In our podcast group on Ravelry, which you can find the link to again directly down below. We have the Year of the Sock 2019. I will put the hashtag on the screen. That is just an informal sock make-along for the entire year of 2019. You can double dip, triple dip, doesn't matter to me. You can dip in as many places as will accept your socks. You can crochet them, knit them. I am working on pairs 12 and 13 for this year, which you will see later in this podcast episode. And then of course we have our brand new make along, which is The End of the Whip, sung to the tune of REM's It's the End of the World and We Know It. Thank you for everyone who pointed out that that was REM to me last time. So the only rule for that entire make along is you have to focus on finishing. So you can have one end left to weave in and you can finish it and post it. You can start a new project and focus on finishing it. You can do any kind of craft you can imagine. It doesn't matter to me as long as you focus on finishing things throughout the summer, and it will be going until at least the end of July. So with all of that out of the way, let me show you my finished object, because I have one finished object, which is actually pretty impressive considering I've been gone for an entire week, and basically this whole week since Sunday I have barely been able to touch yarn. So it was living in this flamingo bag that Kalisha of the Quirky Monday Craftcast gave to me. Hi Kalisha! And it is my own pattern. It is the Pine Forest Cowl, which is this subtle tree image design. Y'all are gonna have to bear with me today. My brain is like a sieve. it has left the building. I can remember nothing. I don't know what's going on. I've had very little sleep. So the yarn that I have been using is Knit Picks Stroll in the colorway Aurora Heather. This is a 75-25 merino nylon blend, and you get 231 yards for the 50 grams. I used for this 2 and probably a third of the ball. You can see this beautiful heathery green color. I really, really love it. And I'm excited to have a little bit left over because I'm going to use this for heels, cuffs, and toes. I have very, very little solid colored fingering weight yarn to use for contrast heels, cuffs, and toes. I have this now, and I have some gray. So this is the finished object. Now I know it's not gonna show up very well on the screen unless I get it close. So I'll show you from far away first. So it's about this big. Ooh, maybe if I show you. You can see the light shining through the trees. Here is the seam, because you make it flat, and then you seam it together. You can barely see it. And then, it's made for a lady who commissioned this from me. She goes to my church, and she is a little bit smaller than me. So I went, it's a little snug on me. It's a little snugger than I would like a cowl, but she is shorter and smaller than I am. So I think this will be really perfect for her. And she wanted it because it's kind of lacy and because she can open it up if she gets too warm. So I'm really, really happy with it. I dedicated all of my crochet time to this until it was finished for the end of the whip. I'm very excited to be actually completing things. And it's just super, super soft. I would recommend though, because Stroll Superwash says that you can machine wash it and tumble dry it low, and you totally can. I can still see the stitches, but I will say it felted ever so slightly. So there's just kind of like a fuzz on it, which reminds me of Knit Picks Felici, which I machine wash and dry my Felici socks constantly all the time. But I would be careful what you put this in the washer with, and I would, if you're gonna wash it, I would machine wash it cold and then tumble dry it low, would be my recommendation. So it's still perfectly fine. It's just, it's definitely a little more compacted and a slightly more of a halo, like connecting the stitches, than it was when I first finished it. But as you can see, you can still see the individual stitches, so it's not really a problem. It's not felted solid, which is good. So this is done. I love it. I'm so excited to have it finished. And that is another whip that I have checked off in my Ravelry queue. And speaking of my Ravelry queue, I know I get questions sometimes on like what a pattern is or what yarn I've used. And I have really, really tried very hard this year, especially since January, to be using my Ravelry queue and to put every whip that I am working on in there. And the yarn eventually, and a photo of what I have done. I'm not very good at putting notes, but that is a way for me to keep track of my projects. So if you have a question about something I've made, especially since January, I guarantee you it's in there somewhere, either in whips or in finished objects. And you can even search, there's all kinds of ways you can search in Ravelry. You can search by the year it was made, etc., the type of craft, the type of garment, the type of yarn, anything. Ravelry is the best. So I'm excited to have that done. I'm now have spent all of my crochet energy before I went on this trip. I was not able to crochet at all on the trip. I knitted a little bit on a sock. But before I went away, I spent all of my crochet energy on another crochet project, which actually is getting close to finish. I would say it's like 2/3 of the way of the crochet being done. And then of course, I will have to write up the pattern because it's a design. So let's move right along to whips. And it's living in my favorite alpaca my bag. And of course, customary and necessary alpaca butt shot. I got this bag at Knit with an exclamation point in Longwood, I believe, when I visited Kalisha of the Quirky Monday Craftcast and Elizabeth from Crochet Cakes, who just got married. So I want to say a giant, humongous congratulations to her and Edison, and of course her mother Caroline of the Mind and Muse Craftcast. And that was a wonderful, wonderful meetup. And I got this bag with it and one ball of yarn that I've already made socks with. So the yarn that is living in here, let me get it out. I'm very entangled. Is this beautiful yarn. Let me find the tag. It is Malabrigo Machita. It's either Machita or Makita. I'm not sure. The colorway is Lynx. That is 681 Lynx. It is a single ply, 100% superwash merino. So you get 420 yards, 400 grams. And you can tell it's orange with dark speckling, and the speckling is actually purple. So I have 2 balls of this, and I think that I'm actually gonna be able to get this design out of 1 ball, fingers crossed, if that it's close enough. I'm pretty sure, I have not weighed what I have left, but this seems like enough to me to finish this. And I will show you what I have done since you last saw me. Now this is the stitch marker where I was last time. I had this much done, and now I have this much done. Now, of course, this is going to need a good block. I'm just at the part where I'm going to start going up without increasing, so that it will go, it's going to go around and be seamed, so it's going to be a cowl. And I want there to be a little volume right here where it doesn't increase, so that you'll have more of a seam and it'll be warm. Now, of course, you could use it without increasing. You could just stop right here and then just bind off, cast off. No, let's see. Fasten off. That's for crochet. I'm getting my terms all confused. You could fasten off and just wear it kind of like a bandana, but if you would want it to keep you warm at all, you would need a little more volume right here. So this is the lace pattern. Every so often, there are these lace eyelet rows. Sorry, small break. My husband just got back and brought me dun, da, 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 a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful, life-giving coffee, which by the time I'm done with this podcast, I will have feel the effects. And a croissant, which I promptly stuffed the whole thing in my mouth. Anyways, I am trying to recreate kind of a knitted look with this, because you can still clearly tell that it's crochet, but the stitches are kind of linked together a little bit. And with these eyelets, they're actually really, really, really simple to create. However, to me, it looks like knitted eyelets. Maybe that's crazy, but I think just the way that it's done, I like them. So this project is the Nihilist Cowl. It is a design that I am currently working on. Hopefully that will be done very soon, because I am being a monogamous crocheter on my projects until I can actually make some progress and get them finished. That is my only crochet whip, because I had a finished crochet object and 1 crochet whip. Now, I have a couple of sock things to show you, and I have 1 little knitting project to show you. I only worked on this like 1 day. It is the Transitions Shawl by Hand Knit by Cam, and you will be able to see, this stitch marker is where I was last time, so I've only done like 4 rows of the gray. It was like 1 night. I think it was a night that my girlfriends came over and we watched TV, and that's what I was doing. So this is the Transition Shawl. It has grown ever so slightly, but hey, I'm proud of it. So it goes on the podcast, even if it has only 3 rows worked on it. And of course, I'm all using the yarn from Valley Yarns Haydenville by Webbs. Haydenville? Oh, let's see. Valley Yarns, Charlemont, not Haydenville. Haydenville is the worsted weight. Charlemont is the fingering weight. This is a 60% merino, 20% silk, and 20% nylon for 100 grams. And I had all of those colors that you see. So I'm not gonna spend too much time on that, because I only did 4 rows, and you can totally find out about it more when I actually work on it more. I'm a mess, you guys. My hair is so wet. I did not get enough sleep. I need help today. Help, send help. Oh, yes. That's still a little bit too hot, actually. Okay, let's talk about socks. First of all, I started a new pair. Well, I started 2 new pairs. Did you see last time? I think you saw one of the pairs that I started last time. So what is living in this amazing rainbow llamacorn bag? This is one of 2 sock bags that I have from Slip Stitch Studios. I love, love, love their sock bags. It is totally worth the price. They're so well made. So what I have in here is the yarn that I talked about last time from Hobbii Yarns, which they sent me to review and test out. They sent me a bunch of sock yarn. So I've started my first pair of socks. This gray is called Light Gray from Happy Feet. So I have used this so far on a toe, and then I broke into this ball of yarn, which is the Antarctica, let's see what colorway it is, I can't remember because my brain, you guys. Colorway Falkland. So it's the Antarctica self-striping sock yarn colorway Falkland. You get 459 yards per 100 grams, and it is a 75-25 wool nylon blend. This is how much I have. It's not very much. I did the toe, and I have gotten through one green stripe. Now, I know that it looks, because this green stripe is so big, that I started in the middle of a blue stripe, but I didn't. I started at the very beginning of the blue stripe so that I would be able to match these socks exactly. So the green stripe is just that large, and I believe that when I run out of the green shortly and start the pink stripe is gonna be that large as well. Although it does seem to have a little bit of purple in it, and then it's gonna go back to, there's purple and then there's pink, which may be smaller? A smaller stripe? I can't really tell. You can kind of see how it works this way, and then the blue stripe is skinny. So I think the stripes are gonna be different sizes, which is really interesting, and I am excited to work on this more. I just didn't take it with me on the trip. So we have a beautiful toe and some green, and I really like working with it so far. As I said before, the yarn is definitely, I'm trying to compare it to Knit Picks Felici, and the yarn is definitely like rougher, sturdier, scratchier, more rustic than Felici, but that's a pretty low bar because Felici is extremely, extremely soft. The softest sock yarn I've ever used, I think. So this is much more sturdy than that, but it is not uncomfortable to knit with, and so far I really, really like how it's working up. So that I will tell you more about as we progress. I'm gonna try and keep one pair of Hobbii socks on the needles at a time. So as soon as these are done, I will find another ball because I have enough to make 6 pairs. And I have been watching, so if on YouTube, if you need a new knitting podcast to watch, there is a podcast called Earthtones Girl, and she has been doing this No Fear Socks Make Along or Knit Along, and she has there's a 3-part series on her channel that if you knit socks and you are concerned about knitting socks, you are scared to knit socks, you have got to go watch this because it's such a good resource. So she has the videos that are out so far that I know of, although I have not been on YouTube for the last week, so maybe the 3rd one is up. There is one on a heel flap and gusset on how to knit it. It's not necessarily a tutorial on how to actually make the heel flap because there's patterns for that, but it's how to pick up the stitches around the outside without getting holes, and the construction and why you would use it and how to measure your foot. And then there's a 2nd video on afterthought heels, which she just released, and where to put them, how to do it with waste yarn, how to do it with no waste yarn and just cut your knitting. And I was super inspired by that because I've done heel flap and gusset, and I've done fish lips kiss heel, and the afterthought heel is just a short row heel essentially. Like you just well, it's not a short row heel in the sense that you are working only part of the row. It's a short row heel in that your rows are getting shorter because you're decreasing just like you would decrease for a toe if you're working a top-down sock. So I think that the next pair of Hobbii sock yarn that I pull out for self-striping, I'm going to make just a sock tube and start at the top because I generally do not make cuff-down socks. I make toe-up socks using Sockmatician's toe-up sock recipe. So if I make it cuff down and then just decrease for the toe and Kitchener together, what I'm going to do is then cut my knitting and put in an afterthought heel because it's always been on kind of the back of my mind that I want to do it. And who has a tutorial on their channel? I mean, there's the Kirby Werby afterthought heel tutorial that I have heard nothing but good things about. People have raved about that. And Amy Florence of Stranded Dye Works, in the Stranded podcast, she has a podcast, well, kind of like a tutorial video called How I Knit My Afterthought Heels, and that is going to be super helpful as well. So I really, really want to knit an afterthought heel, and I'm excited to do that. So I highly recommend, if you are afraid of knitting socks, you're tentative, first of all, it's just yarn. So you don't need to be scared. But also go to the Earthtones Girl podcast website or podcast on YouTube, and I'll leave a link to her channel down below. Specifically, I'll leave links to those 2 videos, the one on the heel flap and gusset and the one on the afterthought heel. And I believe she has a short row heel. There's one more in the series that will be coming out or has come out, and if it's come out already, I'll leave a link to that as well. So I highly recommend those. And of course, as I said, the pattern that I use the most is the Sockmatician's Toe Up Sock Recipe, and that is the one I've used before. But once these 2 pairs of socks are finished, I'm gonna do a cuff down and put in an afterthought heel and see how I like it. Because the Fish Lips Kiss heel that I have been doing for most of this year, what I have done is actually modified that a little bit, and I think I talked about this in the last episode. I don't have any Fish Lips Kiss heel to socks to show you at this moment, but I actually took a row of the increases out of the Fish Lips Kiss heel so that it fits a little more snugly on my heel, and I really like it. So it actually takes 2 rows out of the knitting, which doesn't seem like that much, but I've been wearing the socks that I have made, and with that new heel with 2 rows taken out, and it fits really well. Also, the sock yarn that I showed last time, the finished socks, and I said, oh man, I don't know what these are. I don't know what this sock yarn is. Lydia was able to tell me that it was opal sock yarn. So the yarn that I said was, it was very sturdy, but it also felt really good on my hands when I was knitting it. That is opal sock yarn, and it was the beautiful orange and green stripes, and then it went into blue and purple. I can't show them to you because they're currently in the dirty clothes somewhere. I don't know where, but if you go on my Ravelry page, they are my October Season of Change socks for the sock theme cowl. So the ones I just showed you are my December socks for Claudia of Crochet Luna's sock theme cowl, and that is a Season of Joy. And I know that this wasn't any Christmas colors. However, those colors bring me joy. So there. But I haven't decided if I'm going to make those shorty socks yet or not, or if I'm going to make them full socks, because I am making very, very long, tall socks in the other sock project that I have. So this is the other bag, popsicle bag. It's looking a little worse for the wear because I've had it for like 2 years and just have dragged it all over the planet, literally. It's been with me on every trip. It's been with me all over the country, and it goes with me to work, and it's my sock bag. And it was a lovely gift from Claudia, and it is the most used bag that I own, for sure. So let me find the tag because I don't know what happened to it. So the yarn that I am using is this yarn, and it is looks like it's pronounced Zauberball, but that is not how you say it. This is a German word, and I was trying to pronounce it last time, and I got it almost right, and then a beautiful viewer of this podcast commented with kind of the phonetic spelling of it. So it's Zauberball. Zauberball. So instead of a Z at the beginning, you have like a TS sound. So Zauberball. And this yarn I got at Loop in London when we were there in October last year, and so this is like a very special ball of yarn to me. So this is going to be my November socks, which the prompt for that is comfy cozy, and this is the only project that I was able to work on while I was gone on the trip this week. But I do have a finished sock. So let me see what the colorway is. The colorway is Bunt Metal. Ooh. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but hopefully you can. So I have a sock blocker, and I think that this may be taller than the sock blocker. We'll see, because I made a very large, well, not very large. I made a normal sized but long sock. Oh, it goes all the way up to the top. Long for me because I make angle socks, y'all. Look at this. Oh, seeing it on camera makes me love it even more. This really pops. So of course I used the Sockmatician's Toe Up Sock Recipe. Started from here, and then I wanted to use as much of the yarn as possible. I don't want there to be a lot of leftovers in this yarn, and I didn't want to do any contrast heels, toes, and cuffs. I just want to use this yarn for the pair of socks. So I started here. You can almost barely see the increases, and it just gradiates. And then of course I worked a heel flap and gusset, because for my taller socks, I really prefer that to a Fish Lips Kiss heel. I just think it fits me better. And you can see the only part where this is a little, the contrast is stark, is right here, because after the heel flap and gusset, it doesn't, you start working in the round again and then go up. But that really, it bothered me like when I first looked at it, but seeing the whole sock together, I think it's so minute, like you can barely see it. And it just keeps going and going. And then I did 15 rows of a 2x2 rib, and then I did the bind off that is called for in the Sockmatician's Toe Up Sock recipe pattern. So this is finished November sock number 1, and I started the second one. Anytime I had a moment to knit while I was away, which was very, very infrequently, but I was able to knit a little bit when I finished dinner before everyone else, and there was a little bit of time when we were in the vehicle being transported. So I have got this much. So you can see that this starts where this one ends. These are not going to match, they're just going to be fraternal twins because every ball of this yarn is unique, and so it just keeps going. So this is about maybe an inch, 2 inches probably from starting the gusset increases. So that is what it looks like. And we are about to go back into this kind of a color for a little while. So that is my November socks, which I am very happy with. Oh, I just love this. So exciting. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So that is my November socks, and that is all. That's all the knitting and crochet that I've done. I say that's all, like I didn't have a finished cowl and like another half of a cowl and like a whole sock. That's plenty, but I think I would have a little more done if I had not been away all week. Let me show you a couple of things that came in the mail very quickly, and then I'm going to, if you would like to stick around, talk about my trip and where I went. Ooh. Let me put this tag away, because if I don't, it will be gone forever, and then I will never be able to tell you what the yarn is again. Process, y'all. I got, oh, let me not do that. I got a letter in the mail. I don't want to show you her address. From a viewer of this, she's been a long, long time viewer of this podcast. Her name is Mary Grace, and she contacted me earlier and asked if she could send me some tea, and she sent me these two. They're like loose leaf teas, so she made little envelopes of them, and she wrote me a beautiful, beautiful letter, and I haven't tried them yet, but one of them is white peony tea, and the other is white coconut cream tea, which honestly is like the best smelling tea I don't think I've ever smelled tea that good before. The peony tea smells good too, but nothing like the coconut cream. So I'm very excited. She sent me brewing instructions because apparently this particular tea, you need to only brew for like maybe 2 minutes so that you get the best flavor out of it and it doesn't get bitter. So thank you so much, Mary Grace. That was lovely. I am very excited. I'm going to probably have a cup of that on Monday. I think I will have a cup of that on Monday because Monday is going to be a crazy day. Back to work after I've been gone for a week. And then while I was away, I got a beautiful little note in the mail from Sophie, who has this company, Smith Studio Designs, and she hand makes and hand designs greeting cards. So I know that a lot of us send little parcels and gifts to each other, and she actually makes these beautiful, they can have anything on them, flowers, pets, knitting, crochet, it could be anything on there, and they're just gorgeous. So she sent me one and a lovely little note, and this is the card that she sent. It says knit fast, dye warm. And it has this beautiful hand-drawn illustration on the front of it that's been printed. It's blank on the inside and has all of her information on the outside, and I just think that's so pretty. She sent it to me. It came with an envelope, and it came in this beautiful little pink and white package, and she just wanted to send that to me, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous. So if you would like a handmade greeting card by her, I think it's super, super cute. So I will leave a link to her shop down below as well, and you can definitely go check her out. Okay, you guys, let me drink this coffee and let's talk. So for those of you who don't know, if you happen to be new around here, welcome, first of all. I can't believe I didn't say that at the beginning of the episode. Where is my brain? We've already discussed this. If you are new around here, what I do for my day job is I am a pastor. Now, I'm not like a lead pastor. I do all of the small groups and orientation and classes and new membership classes and discipleship and Bible training and all of that. And then of course I'm over a bunch of other random stuff because you can never just do one thing. But I am a pastor at a church in Tampa, and that's my day job. For my night job, I am an adjunct professor. I do some online theology and Bible classes for a Christian college in Florida. And then in between is when I crochet. I just crochet all the time and do this podcast and knit. So my church has been going to Alabama for 4 years now, and there is a place in Alabama called Utah, which is spelled E-U-T-A-W. It is actually one of the 5 poorest communities in the country, which is kind of shocking. I talked about this last year when we went. We go back to the same place over and over and over because we don't want to just swoop in somewhere and like do something and leave and then like feel really great about ourselves. I think that that's ridiculous, and that's very self-serving. We really want to go and assist the people that are already there doing the work every single day and just provide them with extra manpower and woman power. Like, we did a lot of yard work. We did a lot of cleaning. I did some weeding. We painted curbs. We packaged food, and there was all kinds of things that we were able to do simply because there were bodies to do it, as opposed to the few people who are there on the ground every single day. So Utah is almost completely segregated still in 2019. It is kind of insane. There is a community owned and managed by the Housing and Urban Development Commission of Alabama, and that is where we go, and we kind of run, for the last several years, we've run a vacation Bible school for them. And there's about 250 housing units in this particular community in Utah called Branch Heights. There's about 250 housing units, and there are about 750 kids that live in those 250 houses, which is a lot. In that community, there are only 3 active dads in that community that we know of. There is approximately half of the entire population of Utah, which is about 3,000. So about 12 to 1,300 people live in that particular community. And just, it's horrifying to see that like nobody cares about them at all. And they know it. Like, they know that no one cares about them. And of course there's just a sense of hopelessness there. And I don't mean in any way for what I am telling you to, I'm thinking how to say this. I'm not trying to put forth their trauma as a way to make you care about them, right? Caring about people is the baseline, no matter what they're going through, whether it's bad or good. That is the baseline where we should be. I'm just kind of explaining the situation of how it is there. There are plenty of churches in that neighborhood. They will not talk to each other. They won't work together. The white churches won't talk to the black churches. The black churches will not talk to the white churches. And honestly, they won't even talk to each other most of the time in their own race. And they won't go into Branch Heights. There is no church at all in the part of the community that has half of the people that live in that place. So all of the churches are outside of that community, and they won't come in, which I don't understand that at all, personally. Now, of course, I don't live there, so I don't know what the situation was. I don't know the history very well, but as a person who works in a church, I can't imagine not being, or not at least going to the place that needs the most resources and the most attention and the most love, right? So thankfully, something that changed this year, which we've never had before, is one of the churches that is outside of that part of the community has opened their doors for people to come pray on Wednesday nights. And there's a group of ladies who are just incredible. I don't know how many there were, but they met with us, about 6 or 7 of them met with us before we went out and started doing the block party and the games and everything for the kids on Wednesday. And they prayed for us, and they led a prayer, and it was really, really powerful. And some people kind of accepted Christ when we were walking around, and we were able to hook them up with these strong, like, just, I can't even think of the best word to describe them. They're strong and unflinching in the face of what is happening in that city. And they were able to get connected to a local person that they can actually talk to, as opposed to us just being like, all right, great, have a nice life. I don't know, because we won't be back till next year. So we were in Utah for part of the time. We did a huge block party for the kids, which they love. We serve barbecue, we have bouncy houses. Most of the kids show up by themselves. They have no supervision whatsoever. Although there were a lot of grandmothers who came by with their grandbabies, which was just such a sweet blessing to have them there. And there were a few moms, and then there were about 2 or 3 guys maybe the whole afternoon. So we were able to just feed them and love on them and give them, I made 400 snow cones. I know that because that's how many like snow cone cups we had, and we ran out. So I made 400 snow cones. We had popcorn, we had cotton candy, we had face painting, and there was just all kinds of things. And it was just a blessing to be able to give them, first of all, something to do, because there's never anything to do there because no one ever goes in there and hosts anything. There's no sports, there's no parties, there's nothing. So they had something to do, but also just to give them the ability to have fun and just kind of cut loose. And like, it was so great to see all the kids who come in with no smile whatsoever get in a bouncy house and like just like jump around and start laughing, and it's that beautiful sound. And they deserve that. They deserve to have hope because they're humans, right? So that was great. And this year we were able to be in Utah and actually to spend some time in Selma. So Selma is about an hour and 20 minutes away from Utah, and we were in Utah for a couple of days, and we were in Selma. That's where we were sleeping. So in Selma, of course, that was the place of the historic march from Selma to Montgomery in Alabama back in the Civil Rights Movement, and Martin Luther King and many, many other people led that march, walking 54 miles from Selma to Montgomery after an insane amount of violence, an insane amount of racism and prejudice that they experienced in that city. And when they were trying to gather, they weren't, it's such a place of history, and there's so many churches, and it's a different feeling in that town. So it still is one of the locals who had been there for 25 years. We were doing some demolition on a house in kind of, I say neighborhood loosely, a collection of houses. We were doing some demolition on the inside of one so that it can be cleaned up and made into affordable housing for more people. And someone who lived down at the end of the street was talking to us, and she has been there for 25 years. She said that it's not so great currently, that it's kind of like, she compared it to Chicago, where her brother lives, just with the violence that has been happening recently and the things that have been going on in those communities in Selma. But there is a difference between Selma and Utah, and it's hard to put your finger on it, but it's almost like they have hope and the people in Utah don't, because the kids were just, they didn't seem, it hasn't been ingrained in them that they can never do anything else. Now, except live in this place with nothing to do, where no one cares about them. So they just had a sense of joy about them, and so we were able to give them a festival as well and do a vacation Bible school there all week. And it was wonderful. We were able to do all kinds of service projects there. So as I said, we did the demolition on a house. There was a thrift store who 100% of its proceeds goes to getting food and feeding elderly people in Selma who maybe are on low income or don't have the ability to have a lot of food. So we were able to clean up the thrift store and just make it more accessible for people. And then I personally was able to pack 100 crates of food to be handed out to people in the community, which I really, really love doing that kind of stuff. Love it. Although it kind of brought back memories, because I mean, I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money, and there was a period where we ate those potato flakes? We ate that because that's what we had to eat for quite a while, and if I can at all help it, won't eat them anymore because I hate them so much. But there, of course, were potato flakes that we were packaging, and I just remember eating that as a child because we didn't have any money or food either. So I think it's just a blessing to be able to give that to people and just say, hey, it doesn't matter what you're going through in your life, like, you deserve to have a meal. Like, you deserve to have at least the basic human provisions for your body. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It doesn't matter if they're on drugs. It doesn't matter if they're an alcoholic. It doesn't matter if they're homeless. It doesn't matter. It's a blessing to be able to give food to someone who needs it. So we were able to do that. We were able to, as I said, do the VBS. There was a basketball tournament, which I was not involved in because, have you seen me? Do I look athletic? No. I couldn't hit the basket if I tried. Also, I can't see, so I have no depth perception. But there was a basketball tournament that was being run at the local middle school every night for a few hours, and that was a big hit, and it was just great. It was really great. And the difference in Selma is I think people are actually starting to work together, whereas in Utah, nobody will do anything for the community. No one will, like if there's a person who wants to do something, they don't have the resources because no one will help them. No church will come alongside them. Whereas in Selma, there are churches that are actually getting together and doing projects and trying to help people, which is how it should be, right? We got to go to, there's a little museum in Selma right next to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which is of course the historic bridge that the march took place on. And we got to go to that, and I think it was really eye-opening for our team members. There was probably 40 people on the team from all over the country who came, but our team from my church, we had 6 people, including myself. So all of the rest of the people, we are all of course white. So they didn't really have an understanding of what happened in Selma, and I have always been kind of interested in what happened in Selma, but there is a movie called Selma that came out several years ago that I think everyone should watch, but it is especially, I think it's mandatory watching for anybody who is in a pastor, works at a church, in the ministry of any kind. You've got to watch that movie because it is historically accurate and it is horrifying, and people are like, I don't want to watch it because it's really sad. Well, yeah, it's a privilege to not be able to watch it. It's a privilege to turn it off and say, that's not my life experience and I don't have to know about that, because that is the actual life of people, and they fought. They were so courageous to get the right to vote through all of that violence. And the worst thing, honestly, is two things. One, they passed a law in Selma that would not let Black people assemble in groups of more than 3 for any reason other than a church, which is insane, first of all, but they were trying to control the population. So people couldn't march. So when they actually marched, they were doing something that was quote unquote illegal, and the police attacked them multiple times, even though they were having peaceful protests and they weren't doing anything. They tried to organize a march to Montgomery after a particular person was killed. I believe his name was Jimmy Lee. I want to say Jimmy Lee Jackson or Jimmy Lee Jones. I'm so sorry. And I can't remember his last name, but he was killed by the police in that town, and the march was going to be organized to take his body from Selma to Montgomery and put it on the footsteps of the courthouse in front of the governor. So they started marching, and the police unloaded tear gas on them and beat them, and it's horrible. And then after that, there was kind of some nationwide attention. And this is the part that I said is, it's good in the sense that there was a catalyst. It's bad in the sense that this had to happen before the rest of the nation took note. There was a particular white Universalist pastor who came from up north, and he joined in the protest, and there was several white, there was a lot of people marching together and coming to support, but the police killed him and a couple other people, or no, not the police, KKK members came and killed that person. And because he was white, the story blew up nationwide that this was happening. There was a civil rights movement in Selma, and that a white person had been killed, and now everyone suddenly took notice, which honestly, it's a good thing that finally people took notice. The governor took notice. He allowed them to march, and sent the military to protect them while they marched, and then several months later, the Voting Rights Act was passed, and men were able to march. Now, to vote. It's just so ridiculous that a white person had to show up and have violence happen to them for it to matter to the rest of the country. So Selma is such a historical place, and I highly, highly recommend that movie. I recommend you go if you have the opportunity. It's smaller than I thought it was. And I don't know, maybe I had this picture of it being like a booming town, but there's a lot of buildings that are abandoned. There are a lot of buildings that are empty, but there's still so much history, and there's a lot of Black-owned businesses in that town. Like I found a ice cream shop, which of course I can't eat ice cream because dairy, but our whole team bought ice creams. There was a coffee shop that was a Black and woman-owned business, which was wonderful, and I stopped there a couple of times because I want to spend my dollars in places that support people of color. So that was wonderful. And yeah, it was just an all-around amazing trip. And of course, we drove home yesterday, which was Friday. I'd say the drive, if we drove straight, probably should have taken about 8.5 hours, maybe 9, but it took like 13 hours, which is why I'm so tired, because our team was in 2 cars. So we met up at a Chick-fil-A for lunch in Tallahassee, except we ordered online, like on the Chick-fil-A app, of like what we wanted, and they lost our order completely. So they had no record of it. So they had to like remake everything from scratch. And so we had that, so that took forever. And then we had to stop at an urgent care because one of our team members, before we even went on this trip, like cut his leg on a screwdriver. And I mean cut his leg like this big on the side of his leg and deep. And he didn't take care of it very well, as teenage boys are, you know, kind of known for that. So it got infected. So we had to stop at an urgent care, get them to clean it out, and get him some antibiotics to make sure that everything would be okay. I think it probably would have been okay anyways, but it's definitely better safe than sorry. You don't want to play around with an infection like that. And then we got stuck in a massive traffic jam outside of Gainesville, Florida, where like a semi truck had like overturned on the side of the road, and it was like for 2 hours. And then we finally made it home at 9:30 p.m. after we left at 8:30 a.m. And then I basically went straight to bed. So, well, my husband had to come pick me up from the church. So we got back probably 10:30 to my house. And then I went straight to bed. And now I'm talking to you. I have all kinds of plans for today. So I'm going to edit this and get it uploaded as soon as I possibly can, because it's 9:20 right now. At noon, we are meeting some friends at a local brewery, and then at 1 p.m. across the street from that, we have a tour of a whiskey and vodka distillery, like to see how they make everything, which I think is pretty cool. And then we'll probably have dinner with our friends. Tomorrow is Sunday, so that's a work day for me at church, and I have to prep for my small group that is tomorrow at 8 a.m. because, listen to this, I took my book. We're going through Romans chapter by chapter, but I took my book so that I could prepare ahead of time for the group tomorrow. Did I take the book, the right one? No, I did not. So I have no idea what I'm supposed to be even talking about tomorrow. But I will do that today as well. And then of course Monday, and for the rest of the week, is Vacation Bible School at our own church. So it's just gonna be really crazy, but I think it will be fun. And hopefully I'll have some crochet time, some knitting time. It's just gonna be hopefully wonderful. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I hope you're having a wonderful 2 weeks. I would just highly encourage you to look around wherever you are. I can promise you, like people talk about missions trips as like this thing that you go and you do and then you come home. But there's stuff around everywhere, everyone can do. So in your neighborhood, in your community, I guarantee you there's a food bank. I guarantee you there's some kind of thrift store for people who need a little help with their clothing. I just guarantee you there are places to plug in. Churches do things, all kinds of stuff. So find somewhere and do some good, because if we aren't the ones that need the help, then that means we're privileged enough to help other people. And I think that's wonderful. And that's part of what being human should be, right? To help each other. So I will see you in 2 weeks. Until then, happy crafting and be kind to yourself. Bye.